Welcome to the first edition of the Gentleman Fantasy Podcast. And, of course, being our nature, the first edition of the Gentleman Fantasy Podcast, my partner, my compadre, my color commentator, Robert Rushlow, is not with me. He is actually on the Hot Stuff Pizzeria hotline. Robert, how is it tonight?
What up, Pope? I am here. I am excited for football. It's time.
It is time, actually. We are in the midst of a barn burner of a first quarter in the Atlanta-Philadelphia game.
Exactly. I actually just scored my first fantasy points with that Matt Bryant field goal.
Well, there we go.
A moment too soon.
Now, but didn't you lose points with a Matt Bryant missed field goal?
No, they actually went for it on fourth down, much to my chagrin.
Yeah, of course. I was not watching. Well, anyway, so for those of you tuning in, which should be at max 12 of you, and at minimum probably 2 of you, this is the first edition of the Gentleman Fantasy Podcast, where we will cover all things League of Ordinary Gentlemen Fantasy Football and some other ridiculous stuff outside of that, just our normal rantings, just Robert and Kyle things, and whatever else is going on out in the world.
Speaking of which, let's set an over-under for that right away. Over-under 5 people, including you and me, listen to this podcast.
What's the money line on that? I'd like to say the over, but it's probably going to be the under, right?
Maybe the first one will get that whole, I'll give it a shot vibe, and then they listen to it, and then it goes way under for the rest of the year. Either way, I'm having fun.
Now, do you think we can pat the YouTube stats by just having you and me listen to it on multiple different computers?
I feel like random people might just stumble upon it just, in related views on the side and listen to it for 2 minutes and be like, what the hell are they on about?
Yeah, right. There's that random coincidence that there's another Gentleman Fantasy Podcast that people think that we are them and we're not.
Dude, there's got to be at least 4 or 5 Gentleman podcasts in Britain, the UK, that area.
Yeah, guys that wear ties and slacks or something.
Exactly. They're all gentlemen.
Of course. So.
Even the ladies.
So, while we're here, I heard an interesting tidbit of information about you over this last weekend.
Yeah I'm a car down.
Oh, I was talking about your fantasy draft. What happened with the car?
Oh, I rear-ended a dude whilst attempting to make cellular communications with my wife. And I hit a BMW going pretty damn fast. Hence continuing the legacy of Crash.
You hit a BMW. Now, was it a yuppie fuck in the BMW?
You know what it was, and he had every right to be upset. It was an older BMW. It's not like he had a goddamn,
right. So it was the son of a guy who used to have money but lost it all in the stock market. Got it.
Right. It's just I have this BMW to be trendy kind of guy. So
it's kind of a Hank Moody thing. He bought a Porsche in 1992 and it's 2004 and he's still driving it and it looks like shit.
Exactly. When you see that old 90s Porsche Carrera, it's like, yeah, okay,
that
you're driving
guy
a Porsche, but we all know you didn't pay that much for it.
That guy had money.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, what car did we wreck here, and what's the damages?
We wrecked the Impala, and it sounds like they're going to total it out.
Fuck it, just get a new car.
Just a rear ending, right?
Well, that's a good start. Why not? I mean, you wanted a new car anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking winter's coming up. Why not get something with all-wheel drive? And, I feel like I may have hit the brakes a little less hard just thinking that split second, new car, just go for it.
Yeah, fuck it. Who cares, right?
But no, let's get to something more fantasy-related. Yeah. I had my first auction draft, Kyle.
Okay. Now, tell me about this. Now, how was this moment of your life?
I was nervous as hell. It was new territory, I did very little research due to my schedule. And since I was drafting for somebody else, I wasn't all that worried about it.
So it wasn't even your league. Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah, one of my buddies from my unit, he was like, dude, I'm on this trip to Alaska. I have an auction draft. I need a physical proxy. Can you do this?
Yes.
I'm like,
I do love
yeah.
leagues that do that. Hint, hint, gentlemen.
Exactly. It's just professional. And I said, yeah. I said, is there anything in specific you're looking for? He said, dude, I trust you, which is a bold statement from anybody when referencing me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that's a mistake. I would not trust you to find your way out of a frickin' stoplight in Appleton.
Rightfully so. And you know what? I went into it not knowing anything about auctions. All these guys have done it before. And you know what? It worked out just fine. I ended up with all the studs I wanted. If there was a position I was more interested in than others, I got the players I wanted. You only have this. It's no different than a snake draft in the respect that you're going to get some top tier guys, you're going to get some mid tier guys, and you're going to get some lower end guys just based on how much you spend. And the strategy works out the same. Say in a snake draft, you're like, well, everybody's jumping on running back. I'm going to get some high end receivers. Same concept. People are going to blow their wad auction wise on running backs, and you can scoop up all the receivers because you're the only one left with money. The story stays the same, except you have a shot at every player you want instead of being stuck with wherever you're left on the snake.
I agree. I mean, I just think there's lots of different variables, too, because, I mean, that same theory applies with a snake draft, but on the other hand, you are given a hand that you've been dealt with the snake draft. All right, I'm picking 9, and 8 running backs have gone. Do I pick the 9th running back, or do I go wide receiver? And with that theory, just following on, I have been dealt the hand of having to take a wide receiver, whereas in the auction, you can choose your hand that you want to be dealt,
Right. Your strategy is not determined by everybody else. You have choice. You have freedom. It's like auction drafts
it's
are
almost
literally
like it's
the America in the America versus Great Britain, conflict of 1773 or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Hey, and speaking of drafts, let's talk about this mega snake draft. This one we all participated in. Was it 2 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago, basically now.
Looking at the activity on the league page, you'd think it was 2 months ago.
Yeah, no shit. We'll get to that in a moment. But I mean, overall, I mean, what'd you think of the draft? Well,
one thing for sure is running backs went fast, just like we all thought they would.
Yeah, which I think is ridiculous because running backs are less valuable now. There's a lot more mid-tier, I think, and everybody's obsessed with getting that top-tier guy. And hey, let's face it, 4 of the top 8 top-tier guys are going to be worth it, and the other 4 are just going to fuck you. Right. Depending on which guy you were, I don't know,
But look at our league history, and on the surface, it just. How do you not just want one of those guys, the Kamaras, the Gurleys, the Zeke Elliott's, the game changers that you just know have the volume coming to them as long as they don't get hurt? It's tough. It's tough to fight off that urge. And you look at guys like Saquon Barkley, a true unknown, but a running back and a guy that you know is going to be a workhorse, and he's right up next to Antonio Brown, and you're just like, ugh, what do I do?
Well, hey, speaking of Barkley, I'm really interested to see what he's going to do against Jacksonville this week, considering he's going up against one of the top run-stopping defenses in the NFL, and it's going to be his first game.
Not only that, but he's nursing a hammy injury already, so who knows if volume will be limited.
That's right.
But
yeah.
Back to the draft. Something I think that could combat this trend, and call me crazy, this is another, me just trying to change the world. PPR could combat the whole everybody jumping on running backs thing and trend us more towards a balanced draft where receivers have an equal value.
I don't like PPR. I'm old school.
That's all right.
I have another idea though that is
Okay.
similar to the PPR, and it's totally not my idea. I heard it on the Ringer NFL show, and I can't remember
That's cool.
who brought this up. But and I don't know if we can do this on ESPN, but it's something to look into. Point per first down. Okay.
Ooh.
Because that shows you who's important, who the teams go to in a clutch situation to get that first down. You know, your Gronkowskis, your Grahams, your a perfect stat is Jay Ajayi last year didn't have a touchdown, I believe, through 6 weeks, but he led the NFL in first downs, which showed you how important he was to Philadelphia in that run.
Right.
He didn't get the touchdowns; those went to other guys, but he was responsible for a majority of their first downs. Whenever it was short distance, whenever it was important, they gave the ball to him, which to me...
Yeah, he was your 20 to 20 guy. He did all the bigger end of the field work, and then when it got red zone time, it was somebody else.
Sure. And I mean, the reason I think that is important is because it makes better players, better actual players, more important to the game. You know,
Sure.
When Aaron Rodgers runs for a first down, even if it's 2 yards, he scrambled for a first down on third down. That's important to his team, which to me is
Right.
more important than a running back coming out, catching a swing pass on 3rd and 15, going 3 yards with it, but getting a point because he caught it. You know?
Right. Interesting fact. I like it. Getting back to draft reactions, though, I have one more point I got to make.
All right, make that point.
Is it possible not to have a good quarterback this year?
Well, that's definitely true. You cannot have a good quarterback. Yeah, fuck yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, I look around the way the league is now. How do you not have a good quarterback? No matter where you draft one, you look at waivers. I just feel like some people jumped on quarterbacks. I'm not naming names, folks, but I don't feel like Aaron Rodgers was worth that second round jump, and we'll get into that obviously.
Well, I mean,
but,
I don't know who drafted Aaron Rodgers in our league, but whoever did, I would say that is a good pick in the second round. And I mean, do you want to get into that now, or should we get into that later? Because I will give you the theory behind that.
Let's revisit it later because I know we're going to talk about it.
All right. Well, of course, we've got to talk about that. But I think it is because, you know, you say, is it possible to not have a good quarterback? And I'm going to say what the bar was for good quarterbacking in years past is just mediocre quarterbacking now. I think there's more middle ground. There's not as many guys who are just going to fuck you. There's not as many Jay Cutlers. And by the way, someone picked up Jameis Winston, which I laughed, but we'll talk about that.
Oh my God.
I don't know why the fuck anyone would want Jameis Winston. He is the interception king, and he's not playing week 1, so why someone would need to have him right now, I don't know.
It's very interesting.
But we'll find that once I pull up the auction report, because there's some fucking doozies in there, guys. There are some doozies in there. There are guys I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But hey, let's move on. And let's talk about our 3 favorite drafts and our 3 least favorite drafts.
Yes.
I'll start with you. Let's talk. What the hell? Let's go favorite drafts first. Who do you have on your list? Just give me one of them, and we'll just go back and forth.
All right. Now, this may come as a surprise, but Los had one of my favorite drafts.
And
usually I'm the first guy to jump out and say, holy shit, Los, what the hell were you thinking? But you know what? I'm actually on board with what he did this year.
And funny you say that, because I am on the opposite end of that. I didn't like what Los did. But so, I mean, good. So let's talk about that.
All right. Here's my points for this. His lineup is healthy, for starters. That's always a plus. Having a healthy lineup. Yes, healthy starters is good.
He also has Julian Edelman suspended and Alshon Jeffrey out.
Yes, but they're not really like the meat and potatoes of his lineup. Edelman's not hurt either. Edelman's just waiting his turn to come in.
Yeah, that's
and play.
right. He was just doing roids with Everybody else. Yeah,
I
anyways,
mean, there is a year where Edelman missed time, came back, and was very effective almost immediately, and that's when he was hurt.
yeah,
So
but
I'm not worried
was
about
he
Edelman.
juicing at that point? Is my question because he clearly was, and did that make him? You'd have to ask that girl he slept with after the Super Bowl. I don't know if that made him better or worse in bed,
Well,
but
I mean,
she's
I
definitely
would
got a
argue
selfie
that
to prove it.
I would argue that she was juicing that night. But
Well, she
anyways,
got juiced, that's for sure.
well, I mean,
This is
he
where we
did.
need that rim shot sound drop. Anyway,
Anyways, I like his starting lineup. Greg Olson, he got it a value. Lamar Miller could be great this year. Not great, but a starter. I mean, he had a rough year last year, but I think with some pieces coming back, Deshaun Watson in his second year, Miller could see a lot more production. Devontae Freeman is Devontae Freeman. Kamara's a wild card. Breeze, he got him at a value as well. Who knows where that's going to go? And I like what he did with his bench. He took some shots. Like he grabbed guys like Adrian Peterson, Julian Edelman, Alan Hearns, Jimmy Garoppolo, just a bunch of like true wild cards that could turn into every week starters. And that's really what you want to do with your bench, right? I don't have guys on my bench to fill in for bye weeks and maybe get me 4 points. I don't care about that. I'll figure that out on waivers. I want guys where I say, could this guy eventually take over as a starter? And that's what his bench is full of. Guys that could be that.
okay, and I'll combat that. Okay, here's what I don't like. I mean, granted, he does have Garoppolo, and midway through the season, he might just be starting Garoppolo every week. But if you look at last year, Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram in the running game really did a lot for New Orleans, which made Breeze's stats suffer. So, I mean, if they're really getting that running game going, is Breeze really, if Kamara's feasting, is Breeze also doing well? That could hurt inverse with each other. But with Garoppolo there, I mean, I guess that can offset the problem you have at that position. Freeman's solid. I can't really complain about that. T.Y. Hilton is fucking garbage. He's just absolute fucking garbage. I don't care what anyone says. If Andrew Luck is not at 100%, T.Y. Hilton is garbage. Period. And then,
well,
yeah,
that may be true, but he only needs that to work for 4 weeks till he gets Edelman back.
Oh, that way. Okay, okay, I'll give you that. Now he's got the duo of Nelson Aguiar and Alshon Jeffrey, which Jeffrey's clearly the superior.
Catch a 12-yard pass.
Wow, 12 yards. Congratulations, Nelson. That's a golf clap, by the way. He just has a lot of stacking at positions. It's stacking on teams. A lot of the same teams, a lot of stacking at positions, which to me just it bothers me. And I don't know what's going on with Lamar Miller. Every year it looks like he should be the guy. He should be good, and he just does not produce what you hope he would. Being kind of his flex play right now, maybe that's not so bad. But I just, these aren't necessarily saying that I don't think he's got a bad team, but I looked at the draft and went, I don't like what he ended up doing.
Hey, that's fair. Why don't you give me your first team that you liked their draft?
A team that I like. All right. This one, he tends to draft a team that I like every year, even though he does things that just drive me insane in the draft. And that is Ryan. He never drafts a quarterback. He always waits forever, and then he drafts 3 of them at the end. But somehow he always ends up with, like for instance this year, Deshaun Watson and Ben Roethlisberger. If you had to, and he's got Tyrod Taylor. So if you had to rely on Roethlisberger and Taylor every week, it's going to be a lot of hit or miss. But if Deshaun Watson, but they're just insurance for Watson, because if Watson comes back and is Watson, he's got a top 5 quarterback.
I agree.
His running backs, I don't know what the hell he's doing there. He kind of punted on running backs. But at wide receiver, he's got A.J. Green, Stephon Diggs, Larry Fitzgerald. And on the bench, he's got Josh Doxson, Kenny Galladay, and as a flex play, Chris Thompson. So he's got lots of depth. He's got Le'Veon Bell. I just look at it and I say he's got a very complete team, I think, minus, a few small things here and there.
I wanted to pick Ryan as one of my favorite drafts. I don't like the Le'Veon Bell thing. I just feel like that's a
Bell definitely could be an issue.
For the first overall pick, for him not even to come out in week 1, that's painful, man. And,
but I mean, is it 100% sure? I mean, are we sure he's not just going to show up right beforehand? It sure looks like his teammates don't like him anymore.
The Steelers made the statement today that they're rolling out what's his name, the other guy.
Yeah, John Connor, who I'm sure we'll talk about very soon.
Yes, we'll get into that for sure. I'm not that big on Fitz this year for where he went in the draft. I love Fitz, don't get me wrong. I just don't think this is going to be one of your signature Fitz years. I don't see him having 1,000 yards receiving. I think he was drafted and listed on the draft board a little high for what you're really going to be able to expect out of probably the oldest receiver in the league this year.
He might be. I do not have stats on that, but he's definitely up there. Him and Deshaun Jackson.
I don't question his hands. The guy can catch. He can catch like crazy, but who's throwing to him? AJ Green,
And that's an issue, too.
He's going to be AJ Green. Diggs, has a lot. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Minnesota, especially if that running game gets going.
I mean,
I don't know if Diggs is necessarily going to be huge. Like you said, the running back situation is a mess without Bell. I do love me some Deshaun Watson. Dotson and Galladay are two people that I wanted to get later on in the draft that I didn't. So he does have depth. I'll grant you that. I just don't like what I'm looking at with the starter.
Sure. I mean, the point I'm trying to make, of course, and I'm going to say this for a third time, but again, this is a draft I looked at and said, shit, I actually like his team. He kind of hit every check mark that I would look for in a team. Who's to say his team's any good? I have no fucking idea. I mean, Zach probably might have a pretty good team, too. It's just that I looked at his team and said, I wouldn't win any of those directions,
I'm just saying he's starting Mike Gillislee. Enough said.
Yeah, and he picked him up today as well.
Right.
So,
waivers just
right.
Going nuts.
Who else do you got on your like list?
All right, I'm going to say this against my will because it's frustrating. Kral is one of my favorite drafts.
I have Kral as one of my favorite drafts as well.
Nice. So let's bro it out and give each other.
Oh yeah, let's
bro tugs here.
Let's just give Kral a little chub right now, not to be confused
Fournette
with Ed.
And Cook. Fournette and Cook, like power lineup at running back. That I like.
And it's not even just that. He's got LaShawn McCoy as his third running back. I mean,
well, LaShawn McCoy, that whole thing is up in the air. Will he play?
But he was able to get LaShawn McCoy as his third running back because of that situation.
Right. That's the thing. It's nice. It's a great situation to be in.
His wide receivers.
He's playing week 1.
His wide receivers, Baldwin and Cooks. He's got Crabtree there and upside play in Jarvis Landry. Honestly, I think he's got a pretty solid team with the thought that Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck again. I mean, it's hard to really argue with that. As much as I hate to say it, because as you like to say, Kral falls on a lucky fucking golden horseshoe all the time, it seems.
It's unbelievable. With his luck, LaShawn McCoy will be like running back 5 throughout the year. Like, he'll just be the 5th best running back in football.
I mean, Kral's honestly the only guy I know that can show up to a draft one year with a 3-month outdated magazine, but still have 2 fantasy football championships in that league.
He's the kind of guy who would pick up a suspended quarterback off of waivers to back up,
yeah, that's right.
A coin flip in Andrew Luck.
Speaking of Jameis Winston,
and still win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said before. Quarterback to me is something I can figure out along the way. So I feel like he kind of waited on what seems to be kind of a replaceable position to get not a great quarterback, but a good quarterback. You know,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at 2017 statistics, Andrew Luck was the 63 ranked player, 63 ranked quarterback. He had an average of 0.0 points per game. I mean, clearly,
and only 32 teams.
Yeah, clearly Andrew Luck was horrible last year, and I don't know why he would even draft him in that position.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the name, right? Luck. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, right. All right, and who is your last team that you liked?
Another one that's painful for me to admit is Steve Wesley. I like his draft. I like what he did.
All right, elaborate on that.
Yeah, I like Matt Ryan. I think, with the exception of what it appears to be happening
Of course you
tonight.
like Matt Ryan. Of course you like Matt Ryan.
Look, he's a good quarterback. He is.
Hey, by the way, while we're here, one thing we're going to talk about every week, and I suppose we really didn't get into this. Probably should have talked about this at the beginning of the show, but this is our preview show, which might be a little bit long because I believe we're tracking at like the 25-minute mark right now. So this one might be a little bit long, but every week, this is a 16-week installment of this podcast that we're doing here. Every week we are going to talk about random happenings in the league, what's going on, pickups and drops. We're going to look forward to every week's matchups. And of course, we had to look at the Vegas lines and find a few prop bets, which if you look on what site was that we found these props on, Robert? Well, we looked at the Wyndham Vegas Casino sports lines, and if you look all the way down at the bottom of the page, kind of down by where the fine print is there, you're going to see League of Ordinary Gentlemen props. And one of them that I found was who will be who will be Steve's next quarterback man crush. Of course, there's a caveat on this. It's got to be an old, white, washed-up quarterback. Somebody in the realm of Carson Palmer.
Oh my God, you're right.
And as a plus 200 bet was actually Matt Ryan. Surprisingly, Steve drafted him.
He does fit the bill in every category.
He does. Also on that list, a plus 500 was Andy Dalton.
Ooh.
And this guy's a long shot here because he's a little young, but I do believe Derek Carr was also on that list at 16-1.
I would have took that one, to be honest. I know how much he likes Amari Cooper. Drafted him again this year.
Right.
Like I could have saw him going for the Carr combo there.
That would be something that Steve would do. Remember, it's got to be an old white quarterback. That is what Steve does.
Absolutely.
All right, back to Steve.
All Steve-isms being said, I like his draft. He got a running back I was very interested. I was hoping he would make it back, but didn't, is Melvin Gordon. Joe Mixon is a solid dude. I like Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper.
I think
That's
Mixon's
a great combo.
overhyped. Mixon's never done anything. By the way, Amari Cooper's way overhyped, too. I mean, he had half of a good year, and he sucked last year when he was supposed to be the go-to guy.
Dude, I'm thinking, I'm willing to say I think Amari Cooper is going to be like a top 20 wide receiver this year.
Oh.
Yeah, bold statement, right? He got Trey Burton way down in the draft. Trey Burton's going to have a lot of looks. It looks like he's due for a lot of targets with Chicago. Alex Collins is the running back nobody cared about, but is a starting running back in the NFL.
I think that's actually a real nice pickup in that spot. I mean, he got him late. I was targeting him. In fact, I believe he was picking right before me, and he picked him, and that would have been my pick in like the 8th or 9th round. I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, interesting. You would have actually had a starting running back. That would have been neat.
That would have been nice to have one of those, right?
Yeah. And then his bench is, a bunch of dart throws that, could lead to some production. So I just like, when I look at a starting lineup and I looked at Wes's and I just said, you know what, that's solid, top to bottom. Chargers defense, it's a thing of beauty. He did a good job. It's balanced.
All right. Well, my final team that I liked, and this is clear, just kind of a I don't even know if this team's going to be good.
Why are they on video games? They had it taken away for 2 days, starting today.
I don't know what's going on here. And that was Nicole, everyone.
Yeah, leave it in.
Leave it in. And of course, we both have children and wives, sort of. And you will hear interruptions from time to time, and you're just going to have to live with that.
Absolutely. They all have families. They understand.
I thought she was talking about like a football video game. I was like, oh, really? What were we talking about? Saquon Barkley? Yeah, okay. My last guy. This team, I have absolutely no reason for why I like this team. I just looked at it and went, I see what he's doing there. And that's Justin. Justin I'm always flabbergasted by what Justin does because he just picks so many unknown players. Just there's so much upside and so much unknown with every player that he picks almost every year that it's like playing Russian roulette. And
he picks hype players. Hype guy.
I'm really starting to enjoy the Russian roulette style of his drafting. He's got Saquon Barkley, he drafted in the top 5, who nobody knows whether he'll ever be any good. You got Christian McCaffrey, who was Mr. Hype Central last year and fell on his face, kind of. You got Will Fuller, who just catches touchdowns. Demaryius Thomas, who's kind of had a down year last year. Derek Carr definitely had a down year last year. Jimmy Graham, who actually had a pretty solid year last year, but he drafted him early. I mean, this is like a second or third round pick.
Yeah, he went way up for that one.
He got Kenyon Drake in a good spot. He got a sleeper in Robbie Anderson. Mike Williams is a sleeper. He's got Breida from San Francisco, who, depending on how the Selford Morris thing goes down, might get a lot of snaps. I mean, so he's got a team that I just looked at and I was like, I don't fucking know if this team's any good, but I definitely see what he's doing there.
I'm willing to believe it could be.
All right, let's talk about some of the teams that we're not so sure about. Teams that we saw the draft and we're just like, whoa. I already talked about Zach. And my other guy on this list, who we're definitely going to hit a little bit later here, is the, I guess he's not a newbie anymore because we got Jason in the league now, but Travis. He doesn't have a guy that I look at in any position that I'm like, oh yeah, I want that guy. Cam Newton, kind of an afterthought at quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott is legitimately a great running back, but Burkhead is kind of like what are you going to get week to week? Devontae Adams is all right, but is he your number 1 wide receiver? Marvin Jones is his other wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders. Delaney Walker is kind of a middle-tier tight end. His flex right now is Bilal Powell. And his bench is we'll get into this more, but he's got 3 quarterbacks and 3 defenses on his bench. So I don't even know what to say about his bench because he really has nobody to sub for any of his starters.
I think he just got really excited about Khalil Mack and picked up the Bears also.
I don't understand. He's got I believe he has the whole NFC North division defense. He's got the Lions, the Bears, and the Eagles. So I don't know what the hell he's doing here. I don't have an answer for that one.
Back to Travis. He's also on my least favorite drafts. Not necessarily because I hate every player he drafted or his ridiculous string of waiver pickups, but I just see this as kind of like one of those feast or famine kind of teams where, they could all go nuts, and I wouldn't be shocked if he had 150 points one week, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he had 40 points. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's just
And
those kind of teams I try to avoid having.
Yeah, he's also got the Cam Newton Alex Smith combo, which is the I'm asking for wanting to be shot in the head every week because I started the wrong guy. You know, that is like the perfect mixture of two guys. They're just gonna fuck you week to week.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, that's something we agree on. Is Travis went rogue on us and definitely went waiver nuts too. When I actually did my list of favorite drafts and least favorite drafts, I think he had 5 or 6 different players that he has now.
Yeah, right. I know, and but he also lost Jerick McKinnon too, which really doesn't help him out.
That was another big thing is losing Jerick McKinnon is
especially
tough
as
stuff.
high as he was going, because I thought it was kind of crazy he was going as high as he was going, but you know,
right, yeah.
it was that Shanahan offense, you know.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I might have grabbed him if he was in the right spot. I mean, McKinnon's not a bad running back by any length, but you know, it was a little unknown. But you know what?
He's never put it together though. You know, if
right.
he was that good, they wouldn't have drafted in Minnesota.
Dalvin Cook. Right.
Yeah,
There's a reason he was a backup.
Right. Yeah. You know, he could have been good. I don't know, but all right. Who else you got there?
You can be a great running back and not be as great as the starter either.
Well, at this point, I don't think I could be a great running back.
No, but I mean, like, take Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, for example. You know, like, you can have 2 great running backs and somebody's just got to be the starter, but right. I don't think it was necessarily that situation here. Wow, Matt Bryant just nailed a 52-yarder for me. That's awesome.
Has anybody else scored in this game, or are you just worried about Matt Bryant?
There's 3 field goals kicked so far.
Oh, great. And 2 of them are Matt Bryant, huh?
That's correct.
Hey, but Jake Elliott scored, which is bad for me because I'm playing Jason this week.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I am not looking at any of the weekly scores right now because I want to do this podcast blind. I just know that I'm up 6 points. No, 8 points.
But hey,
that's cool.
Speaking of Jason, this is not on the fantasy site yet, but will be soon. Jason and I actually squared away the first board bet of the season. Now, since Jason's my friend and he's joining the league this year, we had to put a little side bet on our matchups this year. Now, since we're in the same division, we're doing a huge side bet where we're tallying every game that we play each other. So we're going to play each other twice. But if we were to play each other in the playoffs, we're going to tally all 3 of those, you know, all 2 or potentially 3 times that we could play each other. And whoever has the most points at the end of the season against the other will win the bet. And the bet is loser has to buy concert tickets to winner's choice of concert. And we got to go to the concert together. Because Jason and I are both music fans.
Really pricey.
Oh, we put the cap at like $40 on tickets. Like, we're not going to see.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to see the Rolling Stones or frickin' U2 or anything.
That's fair.
At least I sure as fuck hope not. I could do without either of those.
Moving on. I just have to get this off my chest. You are one of my least favorite drafts.
What the fuck did I do to you?
Allow me to elaborate.
All right, elaborate away.
I love Aaron Rodgers.
But
I don't like that you drafted him for 2 reasons.
I know where this is going.
One, you are going to get him hurt this year with your curse.
He's never gotten hurt while I've had him as a quarterback.
2, I completely understand why you wanted to trade down.
Right, because I was picking Rodgers either way.
Yeah, man, I just can't justify him in the second round based on the fact that quarterback was all, you know, there was value at quarterback so much further down, you know. You started out with DeAndre Hopkins, totally get it, great receiver, but having punted on running back on the way out, you really should have snagged one on the way back just to get somebody you could justify as a starter. You're rolling on Tariq Cohen and Ty Montgomery as your starters this week, and that is just a 10-point combination to me.
All right, well, here's my rebuttal to that, okay? Now, in the position I was at, I was able to get, in my eyes, the second best wide receiver on the board, which is as best I could do in the first round for what was available.
Totally understand that bit.
And coming back, I didn't see any value in taking like the 14th best running back. I wanted to maximize a different position. Quarterback was the only position that I felt like I could maximize. And yes, I agree. There's a lot of mud in the middle at quarterback. If you don't, in my eyes, if you didn't have one of the top one, to me, really, there was a tier of one. Aaron Rodgers, if he's fully healthy. If you don't have either quarterback number 1, quarterback number 2, or potentially quarterback number 3, which to me was Rodgers, Brady, and then, maybe a Breeze or something like that. If I didn't have one of those guys, and I only would have drafted Breeze if I could have got him in the right spot, which had I known he was going to fall to like the number 6 or 7 quarterback, I probably would have drafted him.
You might have gotten Rodgers on the turnaround, to be honest.
No, there's no way. No,
third.
that was not going to happen. I was too far back in the turnaround. But either way, I felt like his upside of just Rodgers being Rodgers was so far above the rest of the pack. Because the rest of the pack, once it got past really Rodgers and Brady, I was probably going to end up drafting like Alex Smith or Patrick Mahomes or somebody like that. I was not even going to worry about quarterback if I couldn't have gotten my guy where I wanted him to.
All right, I'll let it slide. Just don't let him get hurt.
Hey, and I punted on running back on purpose just because it was like, at this point, I might as well just get the best value I can where I'm drafting at. Once again, why snake drafting is not as good as auction drafting is because I was stuck with, all right, well, I didn't take a running back round 1. I didn't take a running back round 2. I'm just going to punt on running back because why spend a third-round draft pick on the 28th best running back, which is, barely top 2 running back territory, when I can just go out and get a top 12 or 13 wide receiver and then come back and grab a top 25 wide receiver and just have 3 really good wide receivers and just see what I can put together.
You got good wide receivers and a good quarterback. I don't know what Njoku is going to do for you at tight end. I think he's talented.
I don't know no idea either
how far that's going to go, but I'm just saying you got some rough stuff going on. Yeah, especially a running back.
And I thought the tight ends. It felt like the tight ends were going way too fast, and the direction I was going with my team with punting on running back early, and just trying to draft like 5 running backs in a row. I was like, why draft the 7th best tight end? I might as well draft the 14th best tight end. Who gives a shit?
Hey, understood. So in the interest of moving this thing forward, I'm going to quickly get to my other draft I didn't love, and that would be Luke Depre. You got Julio Jones, Odell Beckham right off the bat. That's great. Studs for sure. But it really kind of went to shit after that to me. I mean, you have Zach Ertz, who's currently rolling out 1 point for the Eagles at almost the end of the half. And, what else do you have? You have the entire Tennessee running game as your starters. So Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis.
I don't understand what's going on there.
Two good running backs in their own right, but they play for the same team, Luke. Like that. I mean, he did draft some depth. He got Ronald Jones, Tony Michel.
Yeah, he did exactly what he does every year. He drafts everyone's second-string running back.
Right.
There's a reason why he has the name that he has.
Yeah, I mean it just looks rough in a lot of places. Stafford, does Stafford things, and that's your starting quarterback. His only quarterback. Oh wait,
he's got
Mahomes. But, you're not even starting the guy that you made a bet with me. And it says enough all by itself.
I thought he bet it. I thought he made that bet with Stafford.
I'm pretty sure it was Mahomes because I think he picked Mahomes before Stafford. I wrote it down.
I believe you were like, well, shit, I don't know if I would. No, you have a bet with Mahomes and Stafford because when he picked Stafford, you were like, well, because you made that bet with Mahomes. And then you were like, oh, I don't know if I would have made that bet with Stafford. And then everyone was like, well, you dumb fuck, you could have drafted Stafford instead of Rivers 4 rounds later if you weren't so sure about whether Stafford or Rivers were better.
Right, but my justification for that was I just think there's a wider range of outcomes for Stafford than there is for Mahomes. Not that I like Stafford more than Rivers.
Wider range. Okay, I was gonna say because Stafford and Rivers, I think, might be the same guy, except Stafford's fatter.
Sure, but the whole point
and
of
he
my
probably
bet
has
was,
12 less kids too.
my point in my bet was I don't think Mahomes is going to be good, and I think Rivers will be. Stafford, I wouldn't be shocked if he was the fourth best quarterback in fantasy this year, or if he was the 32nd best. I just don't know. That's why I would have hesitated more with the Stafford bet. That makes sense.
I'll give you that.
Moving on.
All right, yeah. And my last, and this went way too long, by the way. We gotta rein this shit in the future. My last is Ted, or I should say Ed, and his draft problem was the Ted factor. Ted tried what he could do, but I just feel like he didn't get a very good haul for where he was drafting. I mean, he's got Gurley, he's got Cousins and Wentz, which again another recipe for fuck. I started the wrong guy, which it's Ed, so he will start the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And then he's got John Connor. Oh yeah, he picked up James Connor. I'm sorry, I thought it was John Connor.
John Connor's the one from Terminator.
Yes, you're right. And he picked him up for how much was that? Like $23?
27.
$27. It was considerably more than me. I was the second on that list, I believe, at 13.
Yeah, so let's get into that for the gentleman prop bets that you can find at the WindsorCasino.com. One of my prop bets is: will Ed have more Week 1 points or dollars in his free agent budget at the end of Week 1? Now, you can take the points at plus 120, or you can take his waiver budget at minus 160.
Hey, 73 seems like a reasonable amount.
I mean, it's right on that line.
You know, and it's funny because the prop bet that I had that I was going to put money on, but I waited too long to put money on it because he actually already broke it. My prop bet is how many weeks before Ed spends $1 in the fantasy in the waiver auction. The over/under was 9, and he spent $27 before the season even started. So
yep, he just came out swinging.
So props to Ed on that one, because I usually give him shit about not picking up a guy until like week 12, and then watching him blow $42 on a defense just because he's got to blow money and he needs a defense.
Hey, I mean, in his defense, up until he picked up James Conner, his second string running back was Tevin Coleman. I mean, you're starting to back up. You're in a rough spot.
You started that backup all year last year. What the hell are you talking about?
Well, I was in a tough spot. I know where he's at right now.
Hey, speaking of tough spots, he's also still got Des Bryant too. I don't believe anyone's looking at picking him up.
Yeah, there's no top 20 drafted player I like less than Mike Evans, and he went ahead and grabbed him too. So
yeah, and he's also and speaking of his weak running back situation, he has 2 running backs from the Colts, which might be the worst team in the league this year.
Yeah, so agreed.
So Ed, sorry about that, but I think Ted might have fucked you, which is all right because he just gives him an excuse all year to be like, I can't believe fucking Ted drafted that team.
Yep. God forbid he comes to any of the drafts. Anyways, moving forward.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about post-draft stuff. I'm going to run through a few interesting things here. Of course, we touched on Jerick McKinnon, Travis' third-round draft pick, out for the season. Martavius Bryant, Luke's 13th round pick, getting cut. Alfred Morris, Luke picking up for $11 and dropping Martavius Bryant. Which Alfred Morris, I believe his number is 43, and he might be 43 years old. I mean, has that guy not been in the league since 2002?
There's some miles on those wheels, so that's a tough spot to be in if you're San Francisco. Which
I don't
is why
see how he ends up being the full-time guy there. That to me is ridiculous.
No, he's going to be in a timeshare with Breida. The coaches have mentioned it, and McKinnon was going to get a much larger workload than you can expect out of Morris.
Yep. And then, of course, there's also the Le'Veon Bell sitting out thing that we touched on already. And then, of course, my favorite, Marquise Lee getting drafted in the 12th round by Jason a day after he blows out his knee. Literally a half an hour after I pointed at the TV and said, "Hey, Jason, did you see Marquise Lee blew out his knee?" And he looked at me, shook his head, and a half hour later drafted him.
Any experienced fantasy player knows you got to get the injury updates before you go into a draft. It is absolutely essential. You line those guys out right off the bat and not make the mistake.
That's right. Baptism by fire, Jason. Don't fuck up again.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing to touch upon here is kind of an overarching Raiders thing, which kind of almost has nothing to do with fantasy, but I just thought it was hilarious. I don't know what the fuck John Gruden's doing, but they trade Khalil Mack for a package of picks and whatnot. And then on the same day, gets rid of both of his backup quarterbacks, which actually looked good in the preseason, for A.J. McCarron, who looked like his puppy got shot every game that he played this preseason. And then they also traded a third-round pick for Martavius Bryant and then cut him before the season even started. So I don't know what the hell the Raiders are doing there, but do you feel like the Mack trade is going to impact the fantasy defenses at all? Apparently Travis thinks so.
Right.
I'm not so sure.
One of his many pickups and drops included the Bears defense, which is he's currently rostering third on his arsenal of defenses he can roll out. And I would say this. Last year, up until about halfway through the season, I thought that Doug Peterson was a terrible coach and doing really stupid things, and then he went and won the Super Bowl. So I almost want to hedge my bets and just see where this is going, but man, it really looks like Gruden is really screwing the pooch here.
I mean, I don't know what he's doing. And speaking of guys that I don't know what he's doing, let's talk about Travis some more. I feel like we've been talking about Travis a lot. But let's just go over some transactions here, all right? Sunday, September 2nd, he made 3 transactions. This is like a week after the draft. He added Nick Foles and dropped Jerick McKinnon, which makes sense. He added Mike Wallace and dropped Nakeem Hines from Indianapolis. Then he added Vance McDonald and dropped Jeremy Hill from New England. Okay, so today he drops Vance McDonald, who he just picked up, and added the Bears defense. And then he drops Mike Wallace, who he also just added, for the Lions defense. So now he's got 3 quarterbacks, 3 defenses, and no bench. And he's given up on half of his team that he drafted. There hasn't been.
You can't go on waivers.
We're literally one half of football into the season at this point, and he'd done this all before a single moment has been played.
Right. I get a lot of those switcheroos. I can't roster 3 defenses. I just dropped the Browns and picked up the Panthers because I thought the matchup was better and called it a day. In the end, you just got to pick one and roll out.
I've had 2 defenses on a week once when I had a good defense and there was a bye week, but it's not even like he's got 3 bad defenses.
We'll find out.
No, they're bad. They're all bad. It's the Bears, Lions, and somebody else.
Right. Maybe, the Eagles isn't bad, but he's not starting them. He's starting the Lions against the Jets instead, which is, how do you not roll out the Eagles' defense?
Well, they're playing the Falcons. I don't know. The Falcons could get sarked again, though.
Yeah, well, they only got 6 points so far.
Lots of field goals. All right, well, anything else about the post-draft?
I think we're good to push into matchups.
All right, let's hit some Week 1 matchups. Now, every week here on the Gentleman Fantasy Football Podcast, we'll be doing matchups. Now, Robert and I are going to pick the winners. We're gonna have a point about every matchup, and we're going to pick the winners of every matchup. And as the season goes on, we're going to keep a tally on how many picks each of us have gotten right. The one caveat is neither of us will be picking our own game, so we'll each be making 5 picks a week.
Right.
And then at the end of the year, I don't know, one of us will buy each other a smoothie or something to
Absolutely.
commemorate the win and loss. This is kind of like our Bill and Sal prop bets moment.
Absolutely.
But, speaking of prop bets, I believe we got some more. But all right, let's start off. First matchup: Travis versus Crawl. Now, of course, this being in the spirit of new season, let's talk about some team names as we go through each one of these. We have Crawl's 3 Cooks and a McCoy, and Travis's Adams family. Now, let me tell you, Devontae Adams is a nice player, but he's not worthy of a team name, in my opinion.
Hey, he's got kids, man.
But, yeah, right. And then 3 Cooks and a McCoy. I believe that's pretty self-explanatory. He's got lots of cooks and some McCoys.
Yeah, I think he drafted one of them just so he could have all 3. But hey, whatever. More power to you if you can sacrifice the.
I mean, he also drafted Lamar Jackson, who's not playing, and then he dropped him for Jameis Winston, who's also not playing.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah. All right. Any notes for this matchup?
Yeah. Here's the thing and this is what swings my decision on this matchup. McCoy is playing. There's no way any kind of suspension or anything will take place. He's a full go, and I think that gives Crawl the edge in this matchup. That being said, there are a lot of wild cards on both sides. So, going back to the feast or famine thing I was talking about, I wouldn't be shocked, if Travis totally blew Crawl out. But being that I'm so excited to see Dalvin Cook back in action and the fact that LaShawn McCoy is getting rolled out as his flex guy, I'm taking Crawl to win this one.
Yeah, and I'm on the same thing. My one note is I kind of went position to position, and for the most part, I kind of see it as a pretty damn even matchup. And with that being said, just the 3 running backs to me put Crawl over the edge, and I also picked Crawl to win that one.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, we have Zach and the Kamara Chameleon, and Andrew and the good old Donkey Punchers.
Yeah, buddy.
All right. Oddly enough, and I mean, I bash Joby every year for being, like the Cleveland Browns of our league. But oddly enough, I like Andrew this week, and I think overall, if you just look at his players and their matchups, I think his players have better matchups this week. So I'm picking Andrew in this one.
Right on. I'm on the same wavelength. I like that. With a tough Texans defense, I think Brady's going to do a lot of check down stuff to Gronk. I don't think he's going to have time for a lot of deep stuff. And Ajayi, I think he's going to get a lot of work without Wentz being the starting quarterback. And I think the Saints defense will actually be a wild card here where they're going to crush Tampa Bay so hard that you could be looking at a 20-point defense out of the Saints. So I'm also taking Andrew.
You mean you can't see like a 4-touchdown, 40-point game out of Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I mean, the beard has powers, but I just can't see it in this matchup.
Well, here you have it. So we both took Andrew on that one, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right, great. We're on pace to go 500 here.
Well, fortunately, we each pick one different matchup every week, so that should offset
that's
it
a very good point. Yes, there is one that we're different on every week. All right. Up next, we've got you, my friend, against Luke Depre. Now,
yeah.
Luke, of course, has second string as his name because, his team is never good. And here's the point I'm gonna make. Luke's team sucks week 1 every year. Why? Because he has a whole bunch of running backs on his team every year that he's depending on other running backs to get hurt to be good. So his team's never any good until about week 6. With that caveat in mind, I'm just picking you to win. Bar none. You're just going to win this one because his team looks like garbage, aside from Jones and Beckham.
Yeah, I mean,
it is kind of curious that you got the Stafford-Rivers matchup right off the bat.
Yeah, right? Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Slight spoiler alert. I mean, he's got Julio Jones and Ertz playing right now, and halfway through the game, he's got 10.6 points. I only have my field goal kicker playing, and I have 8, so I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Well, there you go. And explain to me your obsession with Jordan Johnson.
Jordan Johnson, because I have David Johnson and Kerryon Johnson, and because I have Jordan Howard and Jordan Reed, I felt like Jordan Johnson was the appropriate name. And he also happens to be a football player.
So you found a Montana quarterback? Is that what happened there?
Dude, now that's truly doing the right amount of research to get a clever fantasy name that you actually have to think about.
Because I looked at that and I was like, I don't know who the fuck that guy is. I'm sure it means
I have
something.
two Jordans and two Johnsons. It only made sense.
Well, I spent considerably less time thinking about my team name. We'll put it that way.
That's good.
All right. Up next, we've got Justin versus Ryan.
Yeah.
We got I didn't make the draft, Justin, versus Ryan. But I actually, even though Justin didn't make the draft, I feel like Luke did a very good job at drafting a team that Justin would have just drafted anyways.
It is such a Justin-y team. Absolutely. It fits all the categories. Jumping on a Packers tight end, all the banger bust potential players. It's perfect.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so who do you got in this one?
I'm gonna make 1 point, and it's all that matters to me. No Le'Veon Bell means no victory for Ryan. I'm taking Justin.
All right. Well, I made my pick already, and unfortunately, I'm gonna do like a Simmons thing here, or oh shit, I thought the game was in L.A. No, I made my pick before the Le'Veon Bell news. I'm just gonna stick with my pick, and I picked Ryan. And my reason for picking Ryan was you got Barkley versus the Jags, an unknown versus a good defense. Who knows whether he's going to be any good?
Sure.
Same thing with Fuller. I mean, Will Fuller kind of depends on what's going on with Deshaun Watson.
Right.
And then I don't know if Derek Carr is any good. And then you got Kenyon Drake and Jimmy Graham, which to me are all question marks. Even though I said I loved his team in the draft, I think there's a ton of question marks there. So week 1, I am just going to go with the known over the unknown, and I'm going with Ryan for a winner there.
Fair enough. We'll see. This will offset our matchup a little bit. That'll be good.
There you go. We got one different now. And then up next, we've got myself and the Smith-Schuster Arcade, which, of course, for those of you who like fish and chicken, is a play on a small little supper club in Denmark. So, like I said, I spent a considerably less amount of time thinking about my team name. And, of course, you got Jason's Marquise Lee 2018 MVPs, because he is
I love it.
Jason's MVP.
Very good.
Who do you got here?
So some of my points for this matchup is, given your bad luck and the Bears' recent signing, I'm a little nervous that Khalil Mack is going to kill Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, come on.
Like, actually kill him, not even just hurt him. The Rams...
Well, you die a rich man then, huh? Do you think that $60-some million he would get this year if he died tomorrow or died on Sunday, do you think he'd still get that?
I don't know, man. But another thing I like
would that
about,
be a breach of contract if he died before he got paid the $65 million? I mean, those NFL contracts are fucked up.
Fine print. I'm assuming that's why contracts take that long to negotiate, is because they think of these ridiculous things.
I mean,
but
do you factor that
I like
in?
a lot of what Jason's got going on this week. Just strictly matchup-wise. But I like the Rams D against the Raiders. Hopkins and Juju could really feast this week, though, so I think this might be a tight one. But I'm actually going to take Jason in this matchup.
All right. My 1 point on this one is 50% of my matchup kind of depends on how the Green Bay-Chicago game goes. If it ends up being a low-scoring slugfest, there's a good chance that I'm going to get 3 bad scores from my 2 running backs and my quarterback. If it's a scoring affair, then I'm probably going to do all right. But
fair enough.
And for being a newbie to our league, I kind of like what Jason ended up with in the draft. I think his team's going to be all right.
He found some nice value.
All right, and our last matchup, we have Ed versus Steve.
Yes.
What do you got here for this one, Robert?
So this one is kind of easy for me because these guys kind of fall on opposite ends of how I feel about how they drafted. But it also has a lot to do with, I don't love Mike Evans. I think he's going to struggle a lot this year with the quarterback issue. Ed already lost, Carson Wentz for week 1. He's rolling out Cousins, like whatever, I don't know. I just think overall Steve's team is just going to easily walk away with this. I wouldn't be shocked if there was a 20-point margin difference here. I think Steve is going to win.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess my point to here is I also picked Steve, mainly because I don't care that if Ed only has one choice right now with Cousins since Wentz is out, it'll be the wrong choice.
Right.
And James Conner, if he will be taking the place for Bell, that is a leg up for Ed that I didn't factor in when I was thinking about this. But I also really hate that he's got one defense, and it's the Texans defense, which is a good defense, but it's week 1 versus New England, and New England's at home. I see if this is a close game, there's a very good chance that the Texans could screw Ed here. I'm going with Steve.
All right, we agree.
All right, well, that's about it for us. It's time to wrap up, but just briefly, every week before...
Hey, this just in, breaking news, a new prop bet just popped up on the Windsor Casino site. I just pushed refresh and this showed up. Maybe they were listening in. But will Travis's team have as many touchdowns as he has waiver moves this week?
What's the over-under on that one? Because I think I'm taking the under.
I mean, so how many waiver moves did he have this week?
This week he had 3, I believe, but he's got 5 total in the less than 2 weeks.
5 total. I think they're counting them all. So do we think his team as a whole will have 5 touchdowns combined?
I say less.
All right. I think I'm going to take the over because they're giving me plus 200 on it, but it might be close. I think they set that line right about where it should be.
Speaking of that, I was, I'm looking at this right now, and I also found 2 more prop bets. What's the over-under on the most money that Luke Depre will spend on a waiver pickup this year? The over-under on that is $58. I'm sorry, I got to be going over on that one.
Ooh, I'm going to take the under. He seems like he draws the line around 46.
Depre? Depre's the guy who spent $72 on that fucking chud from the Redskins that year that ended up getting cut the next week.
Well, I'm taking the under.
Ryan Torain.
1, I feel like he's been mocked a lot and he's learning his lessons. 2, he
never learns his lessons. Don't be
He's
fooled.
already $11 down on Alfred Morris, so I have an inside track here.
All right, I'll give you that. And then the other one that I noticed is the D'Angelo Williams Memorial. Which player in the league will pick up and drop a guy who ends up becoming a fantasy superstar more than one time. Which, of course, you and me, Luke Depre, and I think maybe Ryan and 3 or 4 other guys the year that D'Angelo Williams broke out, he literally jumped from team to team to team for about 7 weeks, and then he became a fantasy superstar. And
we're all guilty of this. I think there was a year where Mark Ingram visited a few teams before he became really good as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if I was guilty of that this year.
And the way Travis is playing right now, I think the odds-on favorite is Travis will drop at least 5 guys that are going to be useful before he realizes they're useful.
I mean, if you pick up everybody and drop everybody, you do have the largest % chance of being someone who had somebody at some point that was good.
I mean, there's 16 players on your roster, and at the rate Travis is going, he's on pace for, I don't know what, like 90-some transactions this year.
I'm curious to see where it ends. I mean, maybe just to see if he can get over a solid hundo just to spite us. Maybe he'll make 2-3 moves every week.
Hey, that'd be ridiculous. Hey, but don't worry about him making trades. He overvalues all his guys.
That's why the waivers are important.
That's right. Yeah, right. Because if he thinks all his guys, I mean, if I offered a trade for the Bears defense right now, I'm sure he'd shut me down and ask for Aaron Rodgers in return.
I mean, I'm not touching that.
Hey, but speaking of that, for those of you who've made it all the way to the 1 hour mark, which we're at right now, for those of you who made it here, every week we're going to come back. We're going to kind of do this same thing. It's probably going to be a lot shorter because we won't have as much stuff to cover. But we are going to, a few weeks during the year, we're going to try to get, Robert will not be calling in all the time. We will be both in the same room together, and we will try to do interviews with different members of the league. So instead of us just picking on Travis, as we did this whole episode, we can actually talk to him in person and then pick on him in person, which I like that idea as well.
Fantastic.
And how we're going to wrap up every week with this podcast is we're going to steal from the Bill and Sal Simmons podcast. Every week they do a parent corner before they wrap up every Monday episode.
Let's make this one fast.
All right. And this one is, I don't know. Hey, do your kids talk in their sleep, Robert?
Not only do they talk in their sleep, but they have conversations with each other in their sleep. My boys sleep next to each other in beds on each side of the room, and I've caught them both talking to each other, sleeping, and it's just the neatest thing to watch. It doesn't last long, and it's not very coherent, but it does exist.
Well, the other night, I of course we got an infant at home, and at like 3 a.m, Evan's crying. I walk in there, I get him back to sleep, I lay him down, walk in the bathroom, I take a piss, walk in the kitchen, take a drink of water. And as I walk into the kitchen, I hear from the other bedroom, Vince goes, "Somebody please get my blankie! I need my blankie!" And I'm like, oh Christ, he's awake. God. So then I walk into the bedroom, and it's dark, and I believe he's awake, and I look at him looking around. He's like, "I need my blankie." And I'm like, all right, I'm looking for it. I'm looking all around. I'm searching in the bed, around the bed. I can't find it. And I just turned to him. I'm like, "I'm sorry, bud. I don't know where your blankie is." And he turned his head, and he pulled the covers off of him, grabs on his chest, and he's got both blankies. He's like, "Oh, they're right here. I need them so I can be happy." And I'm just like, right. I'm going to walk out now. And he was like, "Okay, good night, Kyle." And I walked out, and Nicole was like, "What the hell was that all about?" I'm like, "I don't know. I think he was sleeping. Not a clue." But that's just the shit you run into with children,
Absolutely. Countless times in the middle of the night, I'll be laying in bed, and I'll just hear one of them yelling. And I'll be like, do I go up there and see if they're actually yelling? Because a lot of the times I'll do it. I'll run up the stairs like, crap, there's something wrong. And they'll be out cold. They just yelled in their sleep for nothing.
Well, what can you do, kids?
Right.
Well, we've overstayed our welcome, I think, and I'm sure nobody's going to be listening to this at this point. But
it's week one. It was expected to go long.
That's right. It's week one, and we're going to be doing this every week. We're probably going to be recording on Thursday nights as the Thursday night game's going on, and hopefully we'll have them all posted by sometime on Friday or Saturday for your listening pleasure. And you can find this podcast, the Gentleman Fantasy Podcast, where we not only talk about fantasy football, but maybe our sexual fantasies and just things we like to fantasize about in general. You can only find that, number one, on YouTube, and number two, on the League of Ordinary Gentlemen fantasy site. Signing off for my color commentator, Robert, I am Kyle. This is the Gentleman Fantasy Podcast. You guys have a wonderful week.
Peace.